Hello everyone. Today we learn about chemistry, class 10, chapter 2, chemical bonding. Before we go into the class or the topic, let's do a recap. In our previous classes, we have already learned about atoms and molecules. Let's do a revision for that. We know that atom, it is the smallest particle of an element that can take part in a chemical reaction. And examples of atoms or elements are oxygen atom, nitrogen atom, carbon atom, and so on. And next we have molecule. Molecule, it is the smallest particle of an element that is capable of an independent existence and shows all the properties of that substance. Examples like water, carbon dioxide, etc. We know that molecules are made up of atoms. Two or more atoms comes together to form molecules. Molecules of an element is composed of atoms of the same kind. Example, oxygen, hydrogen, etc. We know that molecules are made up of atoms. And these atoms, they can combine with each other or with another atoms. And when atoms combine with each other, we call them as molecule of an element. And molecule of an element is nothing but a molecule made up of the same kind of atoms. Example, oxygen molecule, hydrogen molecule, etc. In this picture, we have a molecule of oxygen and hydrogen. Here we can see that in the first one, we have oxygen atom, two oxygen atoms. These two oxygen atoms, they come together and they combine, form an oxygen molecule. And in the next picture, we have hydrogen, two hydrogen atoms. They combine together and they form a hydrogen molecule. These atoms, they cannot stay alone. They are individually, they are unstable. That is why they combine with other atoms of the same kind or with other atoms to form a molecule. And next, let's see, atoms of different elements combine in definite proportion to form molecules of compound. And we know that atoms can also combine with other elements to form molecules. And we call this as molecules of compounds. Example, we have water, H2O, hydrochloric acid, HCl, and sodium chloride, etc. Here in this picture, we can see that two atoms of hydrogen combine with oxygen at one atom of oxygen, and they form a compound of water, that is H2O. When atoms of elements combine to form molecules, a force of attraction is developed between the combining atoms which hold them together. So when atoms combine, there is a force of attraction between two atoms. Suppose for an atom of oxygen, two atoms of oxygen, when they combine, there is a force of attraction between them. And this force of attraction is what holds them together. And we call this as a chemical bond. Thus, a chemical bond is one which holds the atoms together in a molecule. And this force of attraction which holds the atoms together in a molecule so that they can be stable is known as a chemical bond. Okay, now let's see attainment of a stable electronic configuration. Before we go into that, let us ask ourselves this question. First is, how do atoms combine? Next is, why do atoms form bonds? When atoms combine, the molecule form must be more stable than the individual atoms. From this, we can know that atoms alone or individually, they are not stable. That is why they need partners so that they can be stable. When atoms combine with other atoms of the same kind or another atoms or elements, the process must be energetically favorable. There should be minimum energy. When atoms combine, the molecule form must be more stable than the individual atoms. From here, we can see that atoms alone, they are not stable. So when they need to combine with other atoms. So when they combine, there should be very little energy involved. If there is high energy involved, then the atom cannot be stable. That is why we need very little energy. We know that the chemical properties of elements depend upon the number of electrons present in the outermost shell of the atom or valence electron. In class 9, we have already learned about the Bohr's diagram of atoms. From there, we can see that atoms have shells, K shell, L shell, M shell, or N shell. And we know that atoms or elements, their chemical properties depends upon the number of electrons in the outermost shell. That is, or outermost shell or valence shell. If the number of electrons in the outermost shell is 8, then they are stable. If it is less than 8, that means they are not stable. And noble gases, they do not normally react with any other atoms. From the previous chapter, we know that these noble gases are stable. They do not react with other elements. Why? Because we know that they have 8 electrons in their outermost shell. And these noble gases are monoatomic. That means they are made up of only one atom. Why? Because they have 8 electrons in the outermost shell. That means they are very stable and they do not need to combine with other elements in order to be stable. That is why these noble gases are monoatomic. That means only one atom. They can exist in only one atom. Noble gases have a complete outer shell of electrons. This shows that they have a very stable electronic arrangement or configuration. When we say electronic arrangement or electronic configuration, it means the arrangement of electrons in the shells of an atom. Configuration means arrangement. Electronic means for electrons. In this diagram, in this picture, this is neon, a noble gas. We can see that in the outermost shell, we have only 8 electrons. We have 8 electrons. That means it is very stable. That is why it doesn't combine with other elements. Here, let's see an example of a noble gas. Say neon. This neon, it has 8 electrons. We can see that this neon, it has 8 electrons in the outermost shell or the valence shell. Now let's see the electronic configuration of few noble gases. First, we have element. Z is atomic number and the electronic configuration and the shell name KLMN. First, we have helium. Atomic number is 2 and the electronic configuration is 2. And next, we have neon. Atomic number 10, electronic configuration 2, 8. Argon, atomic number 18, electronic configuration 2, 8, 8. And next, we have krypton. Atomic number 36, electronic configuration 2, 8, 18, 8. And from here, we can see that from these noble gases, other than helium, they all have 8 electrons in their outermost shell or their valence shell. For helium, it has only 2 electrons, but it is already stable since it has only a gas shell. It is already stable. Except helium, these noble gases, they all have 8 electrons in the outermost shell. Noble gases have 8 electrons in the outermost shell except helium, which has 2 electrons only in its first and only energy level gas shell. Atoms having 8 electrons in the outermost shell are very stable and unreactive. Like I said before, atoms, those atoms or elements which have 8 electrons in the outermost shell, they are already stable and they are unreactive, which means they don't combine with other elements. They can exist independently alone. They do not react anymore. And next, let's see. 8 electrons in the outermost shell of an atom is called octet of electrons. And when an element has 8 electrons in the outermost shell or the valence shells, we call it as octet of electrons. Octet means 8. 8 electrons. 2 electrons in the outermost shell of an atom is called duplet of electrons. And for noble gases elements like helium, it has only 2 electrons in their only shell. But we should remember that for elements like hydrogen and lithium, their stable electronic configuration will also be 2. Thus, 8 electrons in the outermost shell make an atom stable. When there is only gas shell, 2 electrons in this shell make the atom stable. Elements like helium, hydrogen, lithium. Helium already has 2 electrons, it is already stable. For hydrogen, it has only 1 electron. In order to be stable, it needs to have 1 more electrons. When it has 1 more electrons, that means it will have 2 electrons in the shell. Then it is now like a helium. And for lithium also, it needs to have 2 electrons to be stable. Atoms of elements other than the noble gases are not stable. Therefore, they form bonds with each other or with other atoms in order to acquire stable nearest noble gas configuration. We know that atoms other than the noble gases have electrons lesser than 8 in their outermost shell. Only the noble gases elements have 8 electrons. They are already stable and they are unreactive. But other elements, metals or non-metals, elements other than noble gases, they all have electrons lesser than 8. That is why they are unstable and they are reactive. That is why they form bonds with other elements in order to attain or acquire the nearest stable electronic configuration of noble gases. The noble gases electronic configuration, we know that they all have 8 electrons. Like that, these other elements also, they need to have 8 electrons. That is why they copy the noble gas electronic configuration in order to be stable. And the principle of attaining 8 electrons in the valence shell of atoms is called Octet Rule. When these elements, they acquire 8 electrons in their outermost shell. And this the principle of attaining. The process of getting these 8 electrons is known as Octet Rule. And for elements like hydrogen, helium, lithium, for them it is known as Duplet Rule. They need to attain or obtain only 2 electrons. That is why it is also known as Duplet Rule. For your assignments, I want you to answer these 6 questions. First, we have what is a molecule? 2, what is molecule of an element? Question number 3, what is molecule of compounds? Question number 4, what is a chemical bond? Question number 5, what are valence electrons? Question number 6, define octet rule. Okay, there will be.